And then we'll talk a little bit about the prevalence of Latino mental health, supports for college students, examples of helpful resources, and I'm going to break down a couple of resources. I have some that I'll discuss today, but really I'm talking more generally about how you can create these types of resources for your campuses. And then we'll spend a little bit of time talking about special populations within Latino college students. Here's a little bit about the learning outcomes, some of the things that may have attracted you to this webinar today. Identifying the current Latino college student mental health trends, including barriers to access and effective support. Evaluating current interventions that support Latino college students' access to mental health programs. And adapting resources to serve the mental health needs of students within the college community college setting. Excuse me. What I first wanted to do was also introduce myself. I think that this topic area of for Latino college students is actually near and dear to my heart. And so I wanted to introduce myself and put myself out there to show you a little bit about who I am and why I might be talking to you about this today, not only for some more professional reasons, but also for some personal reasons. So you'll see here I'm currently the Director of Case Management Services at UC San Diego. In that role, I serve as a liaison to the student affairs and college community settings that we have here. And I liaison with student health and our counseling center to really support students of concern. And my charge for our department is that we don't have students that fall through the cracks. Should students start to exhibit any concerns with psychological concerns, mental health concerns, or any concerns that are affecting their academic success. In addition to my role, I also serve as a chair for behavioral threat and crisis response for our entire campus. And so I work as in connection with our emergency response team should there be any threats to our campus community, either on a whole or individually. I'm actually trained as a licensed psychologist by background, and so a little bit of my background is I went to UC Irvine as an undergrad. And got my degree at University of Missouri and have been here in California as a licensed psychologist for the past 4 years. A little bit about myself too is I also am the first in my family to receive an advanced degree, and so that I hold that in my family. It's something that my family is very proud of, and I'm very proud of for my family to be able to have that for them. And I'm also the first generation college student. I am no longer the first in my family to have a degree because my father actually just completed his undergraduate degree about 2 years ago. So I'm really excited about that. And but I am first generation college student, first in my family to go to college, first in my family to really experience that college setting and what that's like as a student and going from high school that was 85% Hispanic and had a graduation rate of about 60%, and we probably could count around us the students that were going on to go to school, to go to college. I want to also throw a little bit out to some of the people that I noticed were on the call. I noticed that Rio Hondo College is on the call, and that's actually one of the community colleges that I attended to get some classes and courses completed. And it's actually just really, really close to my house because I'm a Whittier High School graduate. So shout out to Rio Hondo Community College, because I'm glad to see that you all are here and that I can really talk with people that are local. So that's great. So that's just a little bit about me. Some of the other things, I had no idea that I knew that I wanted to go and pursue an advanced degree, pursue more education after high school. I didn't really have a lot of support about what or how to do that. And even going through it, I felt like, I didn't really know who to ask or where to go to, or if even the peers that I was seeing walk around the campus with me had any of the same struggles. So some of these things that we're going to talk about today are near and dear to my heart, because I really think that these are things that can really support college students as we look to see what can be helpful for them and how do we get them to succeed. I also wanted to talk a little bit about terminology. I think it's important to address this as we talk about Latino students, or Latinos in particular, it's a very, very wide scope, and often there are very different terminology that's used for various reasons. You'll see within my presentation that I at times use the term Latino or Hispanic interchangeably. That's just based on the research, based on where I might be getting the information from. I want to stay true to where the information is coming from. So if they use the term Hispanic or Latino, I will keep that as part of the presentation. I will primarily be referring to this group as Latinos. And also what you also might see is if we talk about both men and women as a part of a group, I will refer to them as Latinos. If I talk about any females in particular, that a subset of that group, I will be using the term Latina. So just to want to be clear about that, and wanted to have you all be on the same page. But if there's any other questions that you have or other things that come up, I'm happy to respond to those about just anything about terminology as well. So that kind of sets the stage for us about what we're going to talk about today, and gives you all a clear idea about what we're going to be going through. What I want to be able to do first is let's just talk about what this looks like for Latinos in higher education. So as we start to look at Latinos in higher education, I really just want to even pull it out a little bit further and think about the population that looks like in the U.S. We have 21% of Latinos as part of the U.S. population in that 18 to 24-year-old range. And that sometimes is when we start to see students attending community colleges, attending that time frame. I know that we see a great swath across the population in terms of ages, but 21% of any population is a large amount that we're seeing at that stage of when they may be considering to look at community colleges or look at a place where they're wanting to pursue more education. What we're also seeing is some information about 60% of Latino undergraduates were enrolled in 11% of institutions of higher education. And those institutions we have this huge group that's located and heavily populated within Hispanic serving institutions. And a school that's identified as a Hispanic serving institution is one that sees a population serving a population of about 25% of their students. So we definitely see that students feel more comfortable. Students are gravitating towards more of those college environments where they're seeing their population being well represented. And that could be for a variety of reasons. That could include that they feel that there's more opportunities that are available to them there that might be interesting to them, or they might perceive that environment as being more culturally aware of both the stressors and barriers and the things that would help and support them, more inviting for them as well. So we definitely see that Hispanic serving institutions are the ones that the students feel more comfortable with and are gravitating more towards. We also see an increase of Latinos in higher education in general. And we kind of see this is going to be the projected increase over the next, starting from 2012, so we're looking at up until 2022, that we're still going to see this projected increase of college enrollment, and that it looks like over the course of those next couple of years that college enrollment is really going to rise for our Latino students in particular. And that is also because what we see is we have the largest population of students under 18. We have the largest population of Latinos under 18. So we're going to see those students, those kids move from being in those high schools, middle schools, elementary schools into that community college environment, into higher education. And I think that's important because what we're also wanting to see is let's respond now to some of these increases. Let's make sure that we are ready and prepared for this influx, for these students to be coming into this setting, and making sure that the setting is available, is open to them, and is prepared to serve their needs. So a little bit about Latinos in community colleges. Again, we see Latinos enrolled in community colleges concentrating more in California and Texas. And that's about 62% of those enrolled in community colleges. So again, this is just really pointing to that we are where it's at. We are the ones that are serving these students, serving that age range, and serving the ones that are seeking out that higher education within community colleges. We also see that Latinos are having the highest increase in those receiving associate's degrees, so a 75% increase over the last 20 years, and that's more than any other racial or ethnic background. So what we're seeing is that we also have been retaining them in there and are having them leave our community college environment with those degrees, with that advanced degree, or with that training that they may be needing. So in some ways, I think what that also shows to me is that we're serving that population. They're feeling comfortable with that environment, and we're seeing a lot more of an influx. And so how can we sometimes also continue to do the things that we're doing really well for these students to make sure that they're getting support, they're getting the things that they need. So just a little bit more information about Latinos in California community colleges in particular, that we have, and again, Hispanics representing 20% of the student body enrolled in community colleges. And so that's also, again, I think it's just kind of beating that drum. I think it may also be that things that you're noticing across your campuses as well. But the percent of students enrolled in community colleges, and we see it broken down by race and ethnicity there, that again we have that highest percent, that nearly half of the students that are enrolled in community colleges in California are Latino students. So we want to make sure that, again, that population is being served, and you know, what are some of the things that we may need to address for that population. So I wanted to take a little bit of a break here, and I want to just check and see, and maybe, Carrie, what we can do is check and see about pace. I want to just see how is this going for everybody, want to get a sense about if you want to, we can move faster, slower, you can look and see what those options are on that feedback, and let's just check in real quick. I want to get a sense from you all how this is going so far. Mm-hmm. So again, what we're doing is we're going to take a moment to use that feedback area to the left of the PowerPoint, just given some feedback a little bit about how the pace of me running through my slides is going right now.
And Monique, do you see the responses? We have 86% who have answered perfect and 14% that said faster.
Okay, I actually don't see the responses, so, but that's helpful. Thank you. Oh, perfect. They just showed up on my screen, so thanks.
Okay.
And I also, yeah. So what I also see is I have a question from Bert that we have 20% of Hispanics represent 20% of the student body enrolled in community colleges. That's a good question. So that's in total. So that is the total population of California for Hispanics. That's 20% of that total population at that age range. And then what we see is the actual enrollment when we break down just those enrolled in community colleges. So that first number is Hispanics across California in general. The second one is those enrolled in community colleges. So thanks for that question. Just wanted to clarify that. So what I want to do, so thanks for giving me that feedback, and what we'll do is we'll move forward with talking a little bit about stressors affecting college students. What I also like to see is as I go through this one, please add any other, feel free to use that chat and add any other stressors that you also have identified in working with Latino college students. Because these ones I'm going to talk a little bit about today can be very, I'm encompassing a pretty general group, but I want to be able to hear if there's any specific ones that you all have connected with. So stresses affecting Latino college students include those financial and socioeconomic stressors. And when I talk about that, that could be a multitude of things. What we often see is that students are playing multiple roles in their family. They may be the ones that are going to school, wanting to get that more education, more specialized training, but they also may be the ones that are working full-time. They may also be the ones that are providing resources to the family. They may also be just having some difficulty in just what resources can be available to them, and just how much availability they have to really take that time to go and seek out that education, and if that may be potentially taking away time from work or from other opportunities. So we see a good amount of that. I think what we also see is any additional responsibilities to the family that may be in addition to financial responsibilities. So we may see Latino college students being the caretaker for either younger siblings or family members, and on the other side as well, older family members or community members. So those additional responsibilities may be things that, one, they may not be getting any kind of, it's not necessarily a job, it's part of the family role. They may also be the ones that serve as just that place that has more information for the family. So they may be the ones that may be language brokering. And what I mean by that is just connecting with family members to help them understand and navigate some resources or services that they may need. And so we see a lot of additional responsibilities to the family, to the community, in other areas that maybe other students that don't have those additional stressors as a part of their day. What we also see with those additional responsibilities is that those can definitely take precedent over maybe an assignment being due, over just different things that might be occurring within their classes or their coursework. These things may also impact maybe them taking breaks over time to be able to complete their work. So we see students that might be taking semesters off, for example, to really focus on taking care of those financial responsibilities. I think that we also have some other ones coming in, lack of family understanding of the importance of studying. I think this is where it comes in with those financial responsibilities and additional responsibilities, where we want families and Latino families often want to see that output. What is this going to do for our family in that present focus? And so when we see that you studying for an exam really isn't going to be helping or connecting with that family in that immediate moment, sometimes it can take a back seat, or it could be perceived that it should take a back seat. So we definitely have those. And that also comes in with this critical educational assumptions. So some of it is, that this degree is going to be providing you with money immediately, or that you going to school should be giving back pretty quickly, and you should see that I guess reciprocity happening very quickly, where we all know that education can be an investment, and we want to look and see what that looks like. I think in addition to that, when we're talking about college students, we also think that any additional pieces that aren't just a student going to class or a student taking an exam can be seen as frivolous, or why would you be involved in other things within the community if it's not really pointed towards you finishing your degree or your classwork. So those are some of the things that might be connected to those critical educational assumptions, and then some of those assumptions may even be internal. The ideas about that maybe education isn't for me. I don't know if this is going to be worth it. I don't know if this is going to be the path that I should be taking. And then we even see this idea of imposter syndrome. Should I even be here? Should I even be doing this? Or maybe my family or maybe my community is right, and I should just go in and start working right now and just work my way up because the environment isn't for me. The college environment isn't for me. And so we see that imposter syndrome of, I don't know if I fit in with this group. I don't know if I'm a part of this community or a part of this campus, which means I probably shouldn't be here. So I see a lot of those assumptions that come in. And then the last one, I have it in parentheses, but oftentimes it's that lack of support from college personnel. Sometimes what we see is we have, as college personnel, we have these systems set up where there are certain deadlines, there are certain things to be met, there are requirements of ways that you process things throughout the system. And when, for example, a student might miss a deadline or may need to have some type of a different accommodation, and those things are sometimes hard and fast rules. I think there's that perception of, wow, the college personnel really aren't supporting me, or they don't really see or understand some of those things that I might be needing. And so these are definitely stressors, because oftentimes it's that perception that the college personnel aren't supportive rather than what might actually be going on, or the support that is actually being offered from college personnel. So those are definitely some of those initial important stressors. I also see that we have from some of the other comments within the chat that a student's legal status and then also broken homes due to parental deportations. Those are definitely things that we're gonna address later on as well. But additional stressors that may not be affecting other students that are in their classes. And so what that can look like is sometimes maybe even a lack of the college environment understanding just what those stressors are looking like at home, and that they're feeling a little bit different than maybe stressors that other students are experiencing. So definitely continue to add any other stressors as we talk about it. I'm going to go into the next one also. And that next piece is acculturative stress. So when I talk about acculturative stress, it's really looking at this difference or this distance between the individual culture's norms and that host culture. And when we talk about host culture, it's the college environment is that host, right? So we have students that are coming onto the campuses, and this is just a very different feel for them. For students to, one, have that more individual focus of you're setting your own schedule. You're expected to follow through with these plans and create what that looks like. And sometimes that can be a very individual experience. Whereas maybe in the culture, the idea is to really connect around the community and find those common places about who do I reach out to, who do I connect with that I know or that I'm familiar with, to really find that support. So it can be difficult when this environment can feel like I'm walking onto a campus, I don't really know many people, and I don't really know how I should get my questions answered. So it can be stressful when that environment isn't really comfortable or doesn't really feel like really know how to navigate it. I think acculturative stress also comes up into a place where we see that students that are coming from backgrounds that maybe they're the first generation college students, their first one experiencing a college environment, they don't have a lot of those supports back at home. Somebody to help them understand, oh, there is a place called, academic affairs or advising or different places like that that can be helpful to them. And so having some of that, we call that like social capital, and not coming with the social capital to help navigate that college environment can really start to be seen as stress. What I also like to think about with acculturative stress is we talk about stress within the Latino culture, and oftentimes that stress is really exhibited in the form, when we look at it psychologically, as anxiety. We start to see students that just may exhibit those same symptoms that we would identify as anxiety symptoms or anxious symptoms, but they really connect with them more as being stressed or feeling stressed in particular when they're coming into the college environment. So we definitely see that that connection more to that, and maybe less students identifying as being particularly, I would say, quote, anxious, but rather stressed out. So that's definitely something to pay attention to, is the type of wording and the ways that they may be interpreting that environment and how that may be affecting their mental health. So what we also see with Latino mental health is we see, just like I was saying before, we have those Latino students reporting increased stressors. So again, the way that they can identify that they may have mental concerns might be in the way that they might be stressed. I'm stressed about my classes. I'm stressed about the home environment. I'm stressed about not being able to complete my degree. And that may be the way that they may feel more comfortable identifying what that looks like. So the symptomology and the way that they might discuss it can look very different. And so we want to pay attention to the ways that they identify stressors and the ways that those stressors are affecting them, rather than maybe paying attention to any words that they might use that may portend to symptomology. What we also see for Latino college students is a reporting a higher prevalence of depression. And what we see with that depression, that's definitely where we start to see more of those physical symptoms definitely starting to take hold, where we see maybe a withdrawing from the environment. We see a lack of motivation. We see that any disturbances in their sleep, any disturbances in just kind of their the way that they might be connecting or lack of connecting or interacting with others within their family, friends, or other social groups. And we have that greater history of depression than those same-aged peers. So what we've also noticed is that Latinos will also report that they've had depressive, maybe not identify them as episodes, but have that history of a depressive episode before coming into the college environment as well. So that history also gives us a sense about potentially when they are when they're interacting with a stressful environment, that maybe that those depressive symptoms may return. What we also see is an increase in the prevalence of suicidal ideation for Latinas in particular. What we see for Latinas is that these might be more of the way that they perceive their lack of options, the lack of ways to be able to address stressors, to address their mental health concerns. So we start to see passive suicide ideation in the form of thinking about ways to maybe end a life, or starting to consider things like, what might it be like if I wasn't here? How might that affect my family if I wasn't here anymore? So a lot of that passive suicidal ideation, but really what we've also seen in the literature is looking at it as a way of lack of options. So this is the way that I will kind of think about how to work through my stress, is I'm thinking about what that might look like for my family. So as we see these mental health concerns for our students, these are the things that we want to pay attention to. I've intentionally left this as just kind of a more of a brief area, because I really think that when we talk about those concerns, I really like to see about what are those supports, what are those things that are going to be helpful. Just as much as the stressors are coming for our students onto campus, we have so much more information about what are going to be those supports and how can we make sure that they're really utilizing them and activating them within their family or within the environment. So, before I move into additional supports, please use the chat and see if there are any other areas of Latino mental health concerns or stressors that you would add. Let's take a little bit of a moment there and see if there's anything else that anybody would add. So please go ahead and utilize that chat area. And again, as other areas come up for you or other things, we see the traditional versus non-traditional values present a conflict for students. Definitely. I think that's also connected to that culture distress that is also connected with traditional and non-traditional values. And what we see is we have students that are coming in with maybe potentially emerging or different values from their family. And I think what we also may see as a stressor for Latina students in particular is the potential conflict in gender roles. And that can definitely affect how that can affect their mental health and what that can look like as well. I also have a question from Lucas. How do you think laws like FERPA and HIPAA contradict the value of Latino culture, which are more based in community versus individuality? This is an excellent question, and for those of you all, this is actually like my bread and butter. I work under FERPA, and I'm working in between this FERPA and HIPAA issue all the time to help the students understand what this means. When we're talking about these more state and federal regulations about how information is shared across the campus and what information is shared between maybe health professionals and within our college personnel professionals. I think we have students that really have that lack of understanding, like, well, what does that mean? Why wouldn't you be able to communicate with somebody if they're here to help me? And so what we see with that definitely is that when we're looking at a place that, as a community college, we want to be there and we want to show the students that we're supporting them, and yet we're also having to navigate that there is this regulation that keep us from communicating openly about these things without consent, without just releases. What we want to be able to do with students is really help them understand that and help them understand a little bit about that this is what this is here for, but with releases, with information, we can communicate openly so that we can coordinate anything that needs to happen for the campus or coordinate any way to help make them successful on the campus. And so I think talking a little bit about keeping it up above at the regulation level and talking a little bit about that for them and helping them understand that, because if we just kind of throw a paper in front of them and say, you have to sign this because I want to be able to talk to people, it really is a disconnect for why that needs to happen or why that formality needs to be there. So that's definitely a great question. So I'm going to move into a little bit about support also. So supports for Latino college students, just as much as we have some of those barriers or stressors, I think more so we see that family cohesiveness or familismo as being an excellent support for our students. We see that the ways that students really are connected with their families can really serve as a buffer to some of the things that might be stressful in that college environment. So what I like to see, and I've even heard from students, is sometimes that family environment can give that student a break from maybe just the intensity sometimes that they can feel when they're going through their classes or things are particularly difficult. So they have those opportunities to go back and connect with family, and that can sometimes be this nice kind of break for them, this nice just taking a little bit of time away from classes or from coursework or the types of things. What we also see is that we have Latino college students really forming those effective relationships with peers, with faculty, and staff. So once they are able to identify some of those supports across the campus, those are really the strongest relationships that they hold. And one of the things that I think we'll talk about also is how do we get them to really identify those people on the campus? Because really they're the ones that they really know how to utilize those effective relationships and connecting with them about what their needs are. I think what we also see that are particularly helpful supports for Latino college students are staff and faculty awareness of support services that are available to Latino students. I think that this personally was something that was really helpful is what we see for that awareness is those staff and faculty that may stay after a class for a little bit longer, that may linger a little bit to be able to give students that opportunity to come up and approach them maybe after class, or more in that little bit of a casual environment. And then one of the things that I think for Latino college students that's important is making that connection about who has that information, and hearing that from a trusted source, from somebody that they've developed that relationship with, is going to go 10 times further than reading it on a website or trying to find it on their own. Because now we have some buy-in into somebody that knows and connecting with that community about somebody that knows that that's going to be an effective resource. We see that Latino college students also come with resilience and problem solving to the campus environment. And I think that's so important. As we talked about some of those stressors and those additional responsibilities that Latino students often have within their family or their community, what we also notice is that those roles actually really extend well to them being able to navigate multiple roles within the campus environment. And so they're able to be great problem solvers, they're resilient, they're able to see multiple options when those things are necessary. This responsibility towards others is also something that can be seen as a support, and it goes along hand in hand with a sense of accomplishment as well. So oftentimes what we hear is we have Latino students that are saying, you know, I'm not just going to school for myself. I'm going to school for my family. I want to make sure that my family has a better life as well, and I want to be able to provide for them. And I also want to make sure that I'm getting the best that I can for them, for my family, for my children, for other people within my community, so I can. Some of it is so I can show the younger ones that they can do it, or so that I can help maybe some older relatives or family members. So that responsibility towards others is also something that allows them to persist and allows them to really sustain within the environment there. And lastly, that sense of accomplishment. I think we often hear that there are students that are going into a college environment, there's a sense of pride for the family. And that sense of pride often gets internalized for the students. So that sense of accomplishment and really channeling that as we work with students as a great support, that every semester that they go through, every class that they complete is that accomplishment that they're doing, that they're going above and beyond. And really tapping into that for the students and reminding them of that is a great support for them. So what I want to be able to do also is talk about resources that serve the mental health needs of Latino students. I see that there were multiple people that were coming from within mental health or health promotions. So please add and let us know what other wellness resources that you offer within your college environment as I'm talking about some of these resources too. So go ahead and just throw them out there because I'd love to hear about other examples that are happening even within the colleges that are on the call now. So some of those is some of the resources that would serve the needs are just becoming aware of resources that are available to peer groups. Like I said before, we want to make sure that those effective relationships are, and that community-based type of relationships are the ones that the students are really going to hear the most information about. It's really the best way to transmit information to and from students about what's helpful to them. So becoming aware of what's available at the peer level, so that student-to-student level is really important. Some peer groups with a mental health focus that I've seen on community colleges are the National Alliance for Mental Illness and Active Minds. And actually, looking at both of these, they do have chapters that are ready to work with the students that are interested in that. So really, I like both of those because both of the organizations really work to kind of start that in a grassroots way on the campuses. And so if there's even a couple of students that are interested, I like to see them coming together and bringing those things onto campus. And there are people within communities that are not connected to community colleges that will come in and support that and show you how to bring those peer groups with a mental health focus onto the campuses. And then what we also see is just general wellness resources. So one way to, like I talked about, that Latino students will often connect more with talking about stressors, then what we want to be able to do is offer them wellness resources in general. So talking about almost like a gateway to talking about mental health, which is talking about wellness resources and connecting them with information about what can be available to them to help their overall well-being. So when I say wellness resources, I often mean checking in with them about their stress levels, checking in about their sleep levels, checking in with them about just whether, if you're coming from health promotions, whether or not they're staying hydrated on the campus. So really connecting them initially with some of those more wellness-focused type resources. And then I also see that Bert has talked a little bit about enrollment assistance for health insurance and Medi-Cal. This is something that we've definitely seen happening across community colleges, and it really blends well into my next slide. So one of the helpful resources is this idea of a single stop, as the community college being a single stop and offering other federal and state resources and showing them how to connect with those resources that are available to them within that college environment. So setting up a place where they do have assistance with enrollment into Medi-Cal or health insurance. They do have other offerings or how to get in touch with things connected with immigration law or those types of resources. So offering that single stop type of resource can be really helpful in expanding how the students feel supported by the campus. So if they can see the campus as not only a place where they go and they take their courses, but also a place where they can ask questions, where they can get other information about some other concerns or other things that they may need to take care of for themselves or their family, I think they'll really start to see that environment as being supportive. So again, it's programs that integrate other resources and other aid and those types of things. And sometimes these federal aid or like immigration centers or aid centers oftentimes need space to be able to offer these resources for students. So oftentimes it can be connecting the community colleges with making space available for them to come in, once a week, a couple times a semester, and offering those to the students. In addition, I think another way that what can look like a helpful resource are those ones that integrate academic success strategies with student support and wellness. And what I mean by that is we have students that are there and really see the college environment and saying, I just want to be here, I want to take my classes, I want to do well because I either want to transfer, I want to get this degree, or I want to get this additional training, and then I got to go. But what we start to see is we can show them about how to integrate some of those things. And so it might be creating some resources that have that idea that the supports and wellness components will be things that support their academic success. And it might also be ways to be able to talk about academic success strategies. So those strategies are incorporating wellness resources that can be really helpful. And then I think also, just like we talked about with those community relationships, identifying support networks within student health and counseling centers that that would feel comfortable for Latino students to approach. Sometimes that might be having some staff within those centers reach out to some of the larger classes and going in and talking to them about the resources and having that one person that feels like, oh, I've seen somebody from that center, and so now I have a little bit more of a familiarity about who's there, rather than just generally talking about student health or generally talking about a counseling center or resources, but giving them a face to that name or a face to that service. That can really be helpful in creating that network of, I feel more comfortable going to Monique than I do feel going to Student Health Center. So really personalizing that for them a little bit about who's there and what roles they serve. And so I'm also going to point you to, I think this edexcelencia.org is a great resource, and it talks about multiple types of resources or programs that have been implemented across colleges, universities, different programs within communities. It's really been a helpful resource to see what's been effective for Latino students in particular. One of them in particular was a Spanish language family orientation. What I really liked about this was that could be incorporating Spanish language, but it can also be bringing the family to the college environment and showing them what that looks like. Some of the things that we also see as stressors is that often there's a disconnect between how the family might perceive what this looks like and how the student is actually navigating that environment, especially for family members that, or for students that they are that first-generation college student. So making the unfamiliar familiar, not only for the student, but also for the family. I think one of the things that can be helpful with this is it allows the family to come back when the student returns from campus or from taking exams or from going to classes, and gives them a little bit more to ask about. So and it gives them a little bit more of an idea about what they might be going through when they're away from the home and when they're taking these courses, or when potentially they may be spending a good amount of time there because they're really trying to focus on getting their degree or making sure that they get those credits that they need. So I really like the idea of having that orientation, having that day, and having some of those things available. I want to go to feedback real quick. I want to see how many of you all within the colleges now have some type of orientation that incorporates the family. And we can just do it as like a yes/no if you do have that within your campus. Okay, great. So it looks like about half, excuse me, about half of those on the call do have some type of family orientation. I think that's wonderful. I really think that it brings that family connecting. So I also see that there are certain programs, like the Puente program does, but maybe not the entire college. So I think looking at programs like Puente and thinking about what works for Puente that could potentially work for other students that are not a part of that resource, and how could we maybe create that for other students across the campus? What types of resources would we need to bring families onto campus, and what would that look like? Sometimes to bring on some of these family orientations, it can be offering a multitude of things for the family to engage in. So it could be offering things for kids. It can be offering other opportunities, or just setting up general health days or wellness days or those types of things that can feel like the campus is also just providing some support to the community as well, and then gets the families onto the campus and connects them with what might be potentially unfamiliar to them otherwise. So great. I'm glad to see that these orientations are happening across the colleges on the call. So another one, and this is actually something, when I talk about these resources, I talk about them in general, but I also pointed to them as just ideas or jumping off points about what might be helpful support. So another helpful support that I think that we've seen as be helpful here, and have actually connected with other campuses about how to bring this to their campus, is bringing a Chicana, Latina, or just any type of group forum for students. Now, this is actually something that's offered through the counseling center, but what it doesn't do is it's not direct counseling. It's not psychotherapy. And so it offers that opportunity to connect with a counselor, but do it in a more relaxed setting. So it's offered as like a drop-in. And when I mean drop-in, often what we do is connecting with an area across the campus that's not in the center, a place where students feel more comfortable. It almost feels like a place that they normally hang out or maybe study or those types of things. And gives them just an opportunity where this person is there for a few hours throughout that day to check in, to ask questions about what resources look like, ask questions about if I went to go to the counseling center, what would that look like? What would that? What are they going to ask me? What are they going to do? And what that does is, in the very same way that the orientation does, it makes the unfamiliar familiar. And it does so in a way that makes them feel like more comfortable. So again, we have somebody that's going into a setting that feels more comfortable for the students, and then also hanging out and really interacting with the students casually, checking out and seeing what they're doing, asking them questions about how things are going, so that it does feel a little bit more reciprocal instead of just going to the center, but really like interacting personally with staff. And so I think that this has been helpful, because what we've seen over time is we'll offer this in the early part of a semester, and we'll have nobody attend. Nobody attend, nobody attend. And then you'll start to see students slowly coming in. It'll be one, and then that person will bring another person the following week. And so really the other piece about this too is really making sure students are really going to test you. They're going to see if this is something that you really want to be able to offer. Are you going to stick around? Are you going to be here when I might need you down the road? And then what you'll see is, as you have one or two students come and join that, that they will tell other students about that. So I think it's important to really stay the course on those types of things that might feel like a drop-in or might feel like it's something that they can rely on that will be there when they need it. Because they'll keep it in the back of their minds. Okay, this person's coming in from 12 to 2 on Tuesdays. I see her kind of sitting there, and maybe I'll come by and check in with her next week. Maybe I'll do that the following week. And so they want to know that you're going to be there if they do decide to come and check in with you. This is another campaign that's happening at UCLA. This is actually from I think it's a health initiative that they're working with. It's a larger campaign. You can look at it at healthy.ucla.edu. But one of the things that I liked about this in particular that I think a lot of colleges can recreate is more the idea about how they're connecting with mental health supports. So here we're talking about sleep. We're talking about places to be able to nap. We're talking about places to be able to use that college environment to stay on campus if they need to. And we have students that sometimes will be on campus all day. So how can we serve their needs while they're here on campus, while they're in between courses, and also show them that the environment isn't just here for them to kind of drop in and drop out, but that you can stay, and then you can connect with some wellness resources that are available to you. Sleep is an easy one. Sleep is an easy one for students to connect with, and sleep is so much connected to their mental health and well-being that it can be a place where it feels like approachable for students to be able to address that one. So I bring this up not only to show you a little bit about how they talk about the campaign, but also that really to remind you that sleep can be a great just entry point into talking about wellness resources. And I like to also think about it as sometimes a commodity that they often don't have maybe in their home environment, just that opportunity to get that rest that they need. So I think that sleep can be an easy one to incorporate and an easy one where you'll find resources that are going to be available and one that students feel like they can connect with pretty readily. So I also throw this out there to you about what's in a name. So I really, as you think about mental health supports and the ways to be able to advertise mental health resources or advertise that there are support resources for them on the campus, is to really point to what's going to be connecting the student with how they feel comfortable within their environment. So advising, mentoring, support network, peers, cohort, all of these things are really connecting with community, building community. So I like to be able to think about how are you going to incorporate these types of words into your programs or into the advertisements that you have across the campus. I have to say that once you incorporate wording that's really more connected to comunidad or community, it's not only the Latino college students that are going to benefit from that as well, because there are multiple other racial and ethnic groups that also surround our community. So I really encourage everybody to think about how they're marketing those resources, and even just starting to look at some of the posters or some of the flyers that you may have around the campuses, or even some of the ways that you talk about it on your websites. What are the words that you're using, and do those words feel comfortable for students to approach that? And I'll let you know that those supports that look more like it's a community building opportunity are ones that students gravitate towards more often. So as you think about that, just think about other. These are just some primers for you, these names, but think about other words that you might use when you're connecting with students also. So lots of words out there, but I like to be able to really think about that as we're considering our marketing materials. Let's see, before we get into the special populations, any questions about supports or the supports that I introduced during that time? And feel free to use that the chat area as well. I'll take a couple of, just like maybe a couple of seconds here to see if there's any questions that can then come in. Okay, in the interest of time, I'm going to go ahead and, oh, I see a question. So I have a question here about asking, having a Spanish-speaking group. Can you give an example? So some of the Spanish-speaking groups, I think oftentimes it's about opening that up to students and letting them know that there are some maybe language availability. So I'm going to go back a little bit here, and as we talked a little bit about this Chicana Latina Forum, sometimes even in the way that you advertise this, it can be helpful to let students know that maybe the person that might be attending that is bilingual. So even just giving them that additional information that a particular person is bilingual can be helpful over just saying that bilingual resources are available. So that small change in how you offer that support could really be helpful for students. And hopefully, Luke, that answers your question about just ways to be able to talk about Spanish-speaking groups or Spanish-speaking offerings. Great. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move into special populations, and these are particular groups within, there's many populations because there's a lot more variance within than definitely between any ethnic or racial group. But I wanted to highlight some of these special populations and really consider ways that you might be reaching out to these groups in particular, given some of this information. So what we see for Latino males in higher education in particular is a widening gap between college enrollment and attainment. So what we've seen is definitely an increase in Latina enrollment and degree attainment at a much higher rate than Latino males. What we also see is we see that Latino males are definitely entering that college environment, but often not persisting through that environment. So we see them maybe not completing that degree or completing that goal of maybe that transferring, or even just not completing some of the credits that they had initially wanted to do. We also see for Latino males a larger number of part-time enrollment. And that can be for a variety of reasons. Maybe as the additional responsibilities come in for their roles within their family, within their community. What we definitely see is the financial concerns as being a key indicator for academic success. So if we can alleviate financial concerns and address those, maybe not alleviate them, but address them, what we definitely see is Latino males are definitely more successful academically. So that's one area that we definitely see as a big stressor for Latino males, as an area that says, if I have any financial concerns, then I want to make sure that those are addressed first, and those become the priority over maybe educational attainment. So some of the things that I would recommend in reaching out to Latino males that we've seen in the literature and even in just community engagement is getting to Latino males and connecting with them early and often. So that might mean just really focusing that effort for connecting with those Latino males as you see them come on in those first semesters of them being within your environment. Also, the idea of reconceptualizing academic success. So this is sometimes with the idea of that present focus and with the idea of potential other stressors that are coming in, academic success can seem like a longer term goal, or a goal that can, even for some students, feel more pie in the sky almost. So we want to be able to reconceptualize what academic success looks like, and even show them a little bit more about when you're academically successful, what doors does that open up for you down the road. We definitely know that students that hold any higher education degree make more money and have more attainment of work goals over time than anybody does with just a high school diploma or a GED. So we want to be able to reconceptualize what that success looks like and how just every inch of that success and that attainment really makes them to be more successful candidates in the job market. We want to encourage help-seeking behaviors. And so that is a little bit of like reiterating a little bit about what those resources are going to be on campus. I like to be able to think about ways that we can connect with help-seeking behaviors with some of their needs that need to be met initially. That might be insurance, that might be connecting them with financial information, things that are going to be helpful to them. And if we get them started on seeing the environment as being a place where they can seek help for some of those things that are higher, feel like higher priorities on the list, then they'll start to seek out those other things that might be available, such as health supports or mental health supports. And then also seeking out nurturing and safe spaces, places that feel comfortable to them, for them to work in, for them to be able to connect with other people in, and making them aware of what those spaces might look like. So that's for Latino males in higher education. I also want to go into immigrant students as well. What we see over for immigrant students is lower levels of degree attainment than U.S.-born Latino students, less likely to earn bachelor's degrees. So we see that less opportunities for transferring into four-year universities. Increase of culture distress. Again, we see that even wider gap between maybe their traditional home environment and the host culture, which is that college environment, or even that a larger gap between traditional and non-traditional roles. Financial constraints. We have students that may have difficulty and may not have financial aid available to them. Family work responsibilities are definitely seen as an increase within this group. And lack of recognition of maybe things that they may be coming in with. So they may have actually already taken courses within their within another country, and sometimes we see students that don't get those recognized, don't get that information recognized, or have gone to really excellent high schools and are coming into this environment, and just having that overall perception that even if they're coming from another country, it's probably not the same as our system. So really devaluing some of the education and experience that they're coming with. And that can be an additional barrier for them when they can feel like maybe this environment isn't for me. So what we look for is that cultural sensitivity, being aware of and really asking questions about what their environment has looked like before. And also seeing that there's probably many more reasons why we have immigrant students that are seeking education. For some of them, it might be language education. For others, it might be just learning a little bit more about a specific trade, or even just getting more information about how to navigate what these resources and trainings are within the U.S. culture. So a lot of different reasons, and one of the biggest things that I think about for immigrant students is asking them questions about what's available to them, what works for them, and what's worked in their past, because we definitely see that immigrant students are very resilient and excellent problem solvers. And then one more population also is, in particular, undocumented students. And we talked a little bit here about potentially stressors about parental deportations and those types of things as being additional stressors. But I also want to make sure that for undocumented students that there's information out there about maybe some additional barriers for them. So we have the AB 540 students, Dreamers, and DACA students. And again, if there's any questions about any of those particular areas, feel free to ask in the chat, and I'm happy to explain any of those. But in the essence of time, I'm going to move to maybe the concerns areas. So concerns about, quote, coming out to peers, faculty, and staff. Really, that's about trying to navigate and see what that environment is like for them. Do people feel, this is often a politically charged area, and so are people going to be supportive? Am I going to be having access to that support if I tell somebody that I'm undocumented? There's also additional financial constraints because we have these students that are not, that financial aid from federal or state aid is sometimes not applicable to them. And so when we have students that are really thinking about ways to persist or additional educational or career goals, oftentimes that financial constraint can be a place where they feel like an additional barrier. Again, the reluctance to seek resources. Potential that maybe they don't know that these resources are available to them. Or again, what are the reporting requirements if I identify myself as an undocumented student? So there's a reluctance, again, to seek those resources because are there potential questions that may come up that may, quote, out me unnecessarily or in a way that could potentially, put me in a place where I feel uncomfortable or might be at risk for deportation. And then also, with any of these programs, I think we see a lot of students really getting excited about them and excited about the opportunities that are available to them. But what we also see is that there's definitely a fear of programs like these ending because we have these things that are connected to our immigration laws and often connected to kind of like political, kind of the political climate. What we see is definitely a fear of, this is great for me now, and I'm glad that I can be here, and I'm glad that I can work with this. But I don't know how long this is going to be around, and so I don't know if me persisting within the college environment is really even going to be there. So definitely see that as a unique stressor for undocumented students that we don't see in some of our undergraduate or our other Latino students. And then also a lack of awareness of just general resources across the campus. And so sometimes it can be about connecting with these students. And ways to uniquely connect with students, undocumented students, is really connecting with them via social media. They are active on social media. They have places where they because social media can create places where they can be private, they can be students, but they don't have to necessarily identify themselves in particular. So I would, that's a place where I encourage you all to connect with social media, even if it's just you putting information out on social media specifically for undocumented students. They'll find it and they'll connect with it and they'll connect others with it. So I think that those are really great ways to be able to connect with those students. How many of you all within your programs or departments, and we'll just use the feedback quickly, are active on social media? And go ahead and just use yes or no as the feedback. I'm glad to see that number getting bigger. Okay, good. So it looks like we have almost 70% of you active in social media in some way, and that's excellent. I think that it's a great way to get that information out there. As for Latino students that are really connecting with community, they will share that information with others. Even if you don't actually see it on social media being shared, they're telling other people about it. So definitely continue to use that. I highly encourage you to keep that going for you. So I wanted to just spend a little time reviewing those things, but let's go ahead and I'm open for questions now. So, and maybe Carrie, you can help guide me with how questions can come in if maybe people want to unmute or if we should use the chat area. What do you think would be best?
Yeah, definitely. You can definitely use the chat box to type in any questions or comments you may have. If you'd like to ask a question over the phone line to Monique, you can press *6 on your keypad, and that will unmute your line as well as remute your line.
So we definitely have a good amount of time left, and I'm very open for questions, and I want to hear a little bit about any things that, also if there's any things that you all are doing well on your campuses that you would like to share. This is an excellent opportunity to connect with your community college partners across California. Still here for questions, everybody. I'm here and I'm ready for you. Okay, we have one coming in from Brian Henderson. Is there a perceived lack of support among college personnel, or if there is a perceived lack of support, what kinds of actions can change that perception? What would be perceived as supportive? That's an excellent question, Brian. I think that one of the pieces to that is, I think one of the areas that I've seen has been really helpful is drop-in hours. So when we have college personnel within the academic affairs or just different areas, opportunities for students to just drop in, having that be a little bit more of a casual place rather than having it feel like you have to schedule an appointment in order for your needs to be met. That really can be a disconnect from their culture. And so drop-in hours are really often perceived as an excellent way to just check in with students. And then connecting information, what we want to be able to do is, I've often heard that students feel like when personnel direct me back to the website or direct me back to a specific page, I feel like they're not helpful. And so sometimes I even ask some of our college personnel to go that extra mile. Why don't we sit down and I'll show you where it is on the page, on the website, or those types of things. Those small minor tweaks in being able to give them that information rather than sending them back out to kind of do it in that impersonal, individual way will give that student that sense that that person was helpful. So it can really be those like minor things that maybe it's spending a couple more minutes or going through that website with them. It kind of feels like, you know, why would I be navigating it with them? But really it makes all the difference in the world to have them not just be referred out again to connecting with something else. Hopefully that helps, Brian. Any other questions? I'm open and I'm here for you all for the next 13 minutes. I see another one. So I think we have somebody else that's also suggested attending student life events that are more social in nature. I think that's definitely a good recommendation, is connecting with students outside of that, maybe that role that you have on campus. Maybe not too far outside because you're still on the college campus, but really being able to connect with them and show them that finding out that you're a part of the campus in multiple ways is really, really helpful. And so some of those bigger events that may happen across the campus, if they see you, it can be a really great way to feel like they can connect with you on more of a casual level. And that can often start a connection with students that will bring them into your offices for potentially a more supportive, or if they're needing other services. It's a great way to start that conversation. So thanks for that helpful suggestion. Well, I'm going to be on here for a little bit longer, but judging by your utter silence, it sounds like I totally rocked this webinar. So I really appreciate the questions and your feedback. And I hope that this information really gave you some helpful ways to be able to support Latino college students. And but also, I'm so open to hearing what other things might be helpful or what you're doing out there now. So definitely connect with me. And I'd love to hear a little bit more about what's going on. I'm going to go ahead and type the information into the chat. I'm going to go ahead and type in my email address, so that way you can connect with me, or if you have any other questions or things that come up, please definitely connect with me, and I'm happy to give you any additional information.
Well, thank you, Monique, for this wonderful, important information on mental health supports for Latino college students. And I would also like to thank everybody for taking the time to participate on the webinar as well. For anyone who may be interested, our CCC Student Mental Health Program is hosting another webinar next Wednesday, May 6th, from 10 to 11 o'clock on building collaborative relationships between community colleges, county mental health departments, and local mental health providers. I'm going to just put the registration link in the chat box for that webinar in case anybody is interested in attending that. As you begin to log off and close out of the webinar, there's a short evaluation form that will pop up on your screen. If you can take a moment just to complete it and give us your feedback, your responses help us improve these sessions for the future. So again, I just want to thank you all for joining. Thank you, Monique Crandall, for this wonderful presentation, and have a great afternoon, everybody.
And thank you again, everyone.
Bye.